Welcome to One Book, One Province in Regina, the tour, the Regina experience. I am Sam Maciag. I'm the host at CBC Saskatchewan. I also host the Novel Idea Book Club at Novel Idea Society Book Club. I got excited and left out words, which is how I was invited to do this today. This is Miss Jennifer Wallace, Mrs. Jennifer Wallace, yes. Technically, who is the author of this lovely book that we are going to talk about tonight or tomorrow or the day after, depending on which event that you attend or depending on when you're watching this. It's called Miss G and Me, and Miss G is someone very special to you. I was telling her this before we got started, but my two best friends happen to be either married to or with men who are from Jamaican parents and are second generation Jamaican. So I've been to some of these places. And so the story really resonated with me because of their families. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is something I really identify with, even though this isn't my family history. But before we start, how is Miss G?
She is well. She attended some of the events in Saskatoon and when it opened here at Government House in Regina. So she's proud and she's excited for me. She was tired the one day where there were two events and people came up to her and were asking questions. The next day she said, I needed a nap. I am so tired. But she's doing really well. She's just over 80 and I'm so pleased that I get to do this and have her around.
Your dad read multiple versions of this based on what I read in the acknowledgements.
Yes.
How much say did your mom have in this story and structure? Because it's a little unnerving to write something that is nonfiction to begin with, because there's a lot of research involved. But when it's your mom,
it's personal.
and she strikes me as a strong personality, this one.
She is, and she's private, and she doesn't like to be surprised by things. So I did ask her permission, and she did give me her blessing, and we did interviews. But there was a point when I had to say, I'm going to do this, and that she was okay with it. She trusted me with it, even though there were personal stories that she probably wouldn't have added herself, but I still felt were important to say and to share. I always had that in the mind that I wanted to honor her, and I don't want to, air family laundry or anything like that. But there are times where you have to get personal and have to get into the truth of things that's not easy. And I was really grateful that she gave me that trust and that she let me tell it.
Did you ease into those and have them already written and just be like, so now we're going to include some of these details that you might be uncomfortable with? Or did you talk to her about it first and then write it?
A bit of both. When I was 22 back in the day, I did surprise her with Ms. G. I'd written something and it was secretive. And I went and was researching on the sly and it was not cool. I hadn't included her voice. And so when I gave it to her, it was supposed to be a Mother's Day present. And she's like, oh, thanks. And she just shelved it for a while. And that was, I was 22. And I say this all the time. I love 22-year-olds because they're so justice oriented and so I need to tell the world important things. And so I love that energy that I had then, but I didn't have the life experience that I have now as a wife and as a mom and having gone through difficult times, and her too, and that we've shared those experiences together as grown women. So being able to look back and go, okay, now Mom, I think this might be the time. And we'd lost my mother-in-law a few years back, and I hadn't been able to share as much as I would have liked about her life with with her grandchildren, with my kids. So that was hard, but also important for me to say, I have this time that's precious with my mom. I think we need to tell her story. It's compelling, and there's important links there. I'd watched and read Call the Midwife, and there's a character from Jamaica, and her story was a lot about what Mom had experienced, and I thought, okay, I think this is the time. This needs to happen now.
Did she read it?
Yes.
Did she have any after publishing annotations to add?
Oh, she's told me stories since that I was like, are you kidding me? This should have been in the book. What? And so when I read that part about who is Miss G and I'm still finding out, it's so true. There are still things that I learn about her. And I think that's life with anyone in a relationship, is you still learn things and you're like, I thought I knew you. So it's beautiful, but also it can drive you crazy sometimes.
How did it change your relationship with her?
I think it grew my appreciation for all the things that she's done. Even those times where I was frustrated with her, even now, if I get frustrated, I think, oh, what she came through to be where she is and to be who she is. I'm very appreciative. I think she's also seen me in my realm and goes, okay, that worked out okay. It's hard as a parent to let go, and I think it's a constant letting go. Same thing I talk about with when you leave your home country, like she did, and there's that pulling, that longing and leaving. It's always a pull. I think the same thing with parenthood. There's always that we want you to thrive, we want you to go, but I'm hanging on a little bit as I'm letting you go and do those things. And so I think she is able to look at what I've done and she's proud. Yeah.
So you find out One Book, One Province, you've been selected. Tell me about that day.
Oh boy, I can't even, it's kind of a bit of a blur, but I got this phone call and it was like, you've been chosen for One Book, One Province. And of course, they're still in the year before. It was 2023 when I found this out. And Michelle Good, who wrote Five Little Indians and who's written Truth Telling, and who is world renowned,
loveliest human being.
and yes, she's wonderful. I'd gone to her One Book, One Province presentation, and she's a lawyer and she's so well versed and just knows her stuff and just rich. And I was like, me? What? So I was in tears. I was just like, this is such a big honor. Wow. Thank you so much. And I called my mom, and I love telling this too, because she said, what? Why you? And then we laughed about it. And I think, and I come to the realization, and I share this as well, that I think the reason why she said, why you, is because she was also saying, why me?
Yes, because it's as much her story as it is yours.
Why is my story so important? Why do people want to read this? And I think through this process, she's realized that it's not just her story. It's not just for our little family. My publisher asked, and another Mary Harrican Bishop, who's a mentor, asked, is it just something you want to write for your family? I said, no, it's bigger than that. This is a story that connects people on so many levels, on the immigrant newcomer level, on the nurses who've come from afar, on the connecting with families over the generations, the travel, the leaving in one place and trying to make a new home in another. There's just so many things that I think her story can just shed light on and connect us. So.
Are you protective of the story?
Yes, I am. And I'm protective of her too. There's been times where like, hey, Miss Jean, it's like, whoa, just give her some space. It was so funny because when the cover came out, and it is my mom's face, and the artist Janet Williams, she's amazing. Her parents came through a similar situation, recruited from their Caribbean islands to England to become nurses, and then came to Saskatoon. So that was in itself an amazing thing. But when we first thought about what the cover was going to be, I had assumed that it would be a piece that was more anonymous face. Janet Williams has done some beautiful paintings of women with curves and color, but they often have no face.
Right.
And she's done portraits as well. And she said, no, Jennifer, this has to be your mom's face. And when mom saw it, she's like, oh, that's me. And she was worried.
But that's also great.
It is great.
But it's she's like, oh, that's supposed to be me.
Yes.
No,
yes.
that's me.
Yeah. And so when she was, going into a store, and it was so funny because she told me this the other day, she goes, Janet, I was in a store with the book and no one noticed. That's okay, good. They weren't like, wait a second.
I mean, if you stand there next to the book and are like,
right. She doesn't do that. She's quite private. So I try to be protective of her, but also, yeah, it's your family story. It's your thing. There's a anecdote that I talk about in Jamaica, and it's a tough one. It's about violence and about the tough parts. And it's like, you feel that way about your city, you feel that way about your family, is sometimes you have to tell hard truths, and you don't want to, but you also want to do it in a respectful way. You don't want to be untruthful and hiding it, and because you need to deal with the stuff, but at the same time, you want to protect, like you said. You want to give it special honor, and you want to do it justice, even though you have to deal with some of the tough stuff.
I thought it was interesting, actually, when you talk about that, how you worked in how much Jamaica has changed as a country. Having been there myself and experiencing what that's like, getting into like resort territory or getting into Dunn's River Falls, which is slippery.
Yes,
it is slippery. But just acknowledging the violence and the poverty that exists there, but not in a way, you didn't dwell on it, but you more than just touched on it.
Yes.
To give people a sense of what reality is like there. How often are you still going back regularly to Jamaica?
Not regularly, I wouldn't say. So the last time I was there was 2016 when my grandmother passed away, and my mom actually couldn't go because she was getting treatments here. And so that was really tough. And I'm just always like, oh, I need to go back. Mom and dad just went back this past month and got to see some family. So that was really precious time. But the pandemic and life and other things come up, so I haven't been back in a while. But whenever I go back, people were asking me, what is it like when you do go? It's just such a deep connectedness. You know, you feel like the smells and the people and the faces and the family that you know. There's just so many things that take you there and go, ah, yeah, this is a place I feel at home, even though I didn't grow up there and even though it's not my home. I feel a deep, deep connection.
And is that because of the way your mom brought you up in the culture without physically like sticking you in a place?
I think there's part of that, but then there's also a part of just that almost cellular level where you see a face and you're like, that's a face that I know. And you hear a voice and you're like, oh. I remember my nephew meeting me for the first time, and my sister said he doesn't really go to everyone. We were living, she's in Texas and I was in Saskatoon, and so we didn't see them often. And he came to me immediately.
Oh.
And it was like, oh, he hears,
The
he
similar
feels,
voice.
he knows. And that's how I feel about Jamaica. There's the foods that mom would cook, yes, and the music that she sometimes play, but just that look and that feel and family that you're like, this place is a part of me, even though I haven't been that often. I know that this is one of the places I belong in the world.
How does that relate to church community for you? Because I noticed that was a huge part
It's
of
very
that
big.
story for you and for your mom.
Absolutely. I think that was one of the biggest things that helped my mom in Canada. And one of the hardest things that she had experienced in England was that she didn't find that church community. And that was a real struggle for her. So when she came to Canada, there was a woman who was also a nurse who invited her to their church. And that's where she connected. And that same church had connections in Saskatoon. And so she met people through that. And that was a big deal. Because in Jamaica, religion and church is huge. It's a major
Sundays are
part.
a thing.
Exactly. I write that. Sundays are a thing. Everyone gets dressed up, or people will pull out their chairs and listen. But it is a big deal. And so that the connecting with people, and I say that when newcomers arrive, it might not be a church, but it's finding people who understand you or who want to understand you, who can empathize and who can make you feel at home. And so the Jamaican community wasn't huge at the time when mom came, but she found like-minded people who cared about her and wanted to know about her and welcomed them into her family. And so I think that idea that church has is a good one, of building community and building and really faith and in other people and in belonging. Yeah, it was really important for her growing up and then continuing on and raising her family.
What is your dad's background?
So my dad was born in Regina and grew up in Ceylon for a good time and then came to Saskatoon. His mother had cancer and passed away when he was 15. So Saskatoon, Medicare is a big deal in our family because Medicare is kind of what brought nurses to Saskatchewan and recruiting and all that. But it also brought my dad's family to Saskatoon where the cancer bomb was new. And so that's part of our story too, is him coming to their family, establishing themselves in Saskatoon. And then mom, when she finished work in Weyburn, she was looking for jobs, she thought probably out in BC, but she got a job in Saskatoon. And lo and behold, at church, she was there and my dad spied her and went, hello.
Yeah. So has he leaned into the Caribbean community, or do you guys have a mixed cultural family?
I think we're just a mixed cultural family. We didn't really connect in with the Caribbean community at the time because it wasn't as it is now. We'd go attend Folk Fest and do things where if there was a fundraiser or something. I know there was a time when Hurricane Gilbert came through, and so we helped make some care packages. But for the most part, it's just, it's just family. This is what we do. And so when we've traveled there, he's certainly, taken in, he gets to work. At my auntie's house, he was like up on the roof still. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing?
little old for this.
Yes,
Get down.
Exactly. Exactly. But he's a doer. So wherever he is, he just gets jobs done. And I think that attracted mom to him because she also likes to get things done. So yeah, they're well suited that way.
Okay, let's talk about how you put this book together, because it started as that draft when you were 22. Did you go back to that draft to write this one, or did you start over?
Yes and no. So I did go back to it and I found pieces and I was like, oh, this was good writing. This was important. I'm going to keep these pieces. And oh, let's get rid of that. That doesn't need to be there. So I definitely did go back to that. But then there was so much to build on. So many experiences, so many things that I hadn't included. There was one story that Dina can attest to, my publisher, where it was December when I was like, oh, right, this is important. It was a story about my hair when I was really little. And I thought, okay, so things were kept coming up over the years and that I felt needed to be there.
How did you find your voice changed from that 22-year-old version you to the one we see in the book?
Well, you see both in the book because there are journals from
Yes.
when I was in high school. There are journals when I was a little girl, and remembering those things. And then there are
Did you
times
edit
when
those?
yes and no. Yes
I
and no.
asked because I would not put my journals from high school in a book. So brave of you to do that. But also I was like, this is really well written.
Well, no, like there was the gist and the chunk, the main parts of it are there. There were things that I added. Like there was one where I was talking about my cousins in Atlanta, Georgia, and saying, you know, why didn't they explain a joke to us?
Oh, yes.
And then I added in the line, it is tiring explaining, and I didn't know their lived experience. At that time, I was a teenager.
Because they said it's a black thing.
Right.
And you wouldn't get it.
Right. And I
And
felt
you were
like,
like, huh?
what? Can't you, if I won't get it
Enlighten
if you
me.
don't teach me.
Yeah, enlighten
right?
me, yeah.
But they were also teens, and they were transplanted from Jamaica into Atlanta, Georgia, the southern states. And
Which is a much more black community.
absolutely,
Yeah.
it is. But there's also the remnants of slavery in the States. And I brought this story up about how we had gone to Six Flags. It's not in the book, but we had gone to Six Flags and had done all the rides. And then we watched a laser show. And oh, it was so cool to see these lasers in the sky. And at the very end, they wrap up the show with the Confederate flag and people were cheering. And I was like, what is going on here?
Where am I?
Exactly. And this is what my cousins are growing up in and have to deal with. And I'm sure that they were processing it differently too. But I realized that I couldn't put that on them, all that responsibility, even if it was a joke on a TV show. They're just kids. They're just like, that was funny. I don't know.
And it's
If
a
you
no
don't get
better
it, you
do,
don't get
no
it.
better do better thing
Right.
too, right? As
Yeah.
they get older, they probably feel differently about it.
Exactly. So I think that there was lines looking back on things where I'm like, give that person a little more grace. Give that, understand that you've lived some more and that there are some more things that came behind this. Same like when I look back on my grandmother saying to my mom when she was 17, you go be this, you go do this, you go there and become a nurse. Looking now as an adult and doing some research into how hard it was to get an education at the time and how much she wished for her daughter. And yeah, it was saying goodbye to her, but she was going on to do
To this
important
vision for
things.
her.
Yeah. And so I have more understanding for my grandma now, and I'm grateful. I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking. But I have that understanding of, she just wanted the best for her kids. That's what we all want. And we might not go about it the way our kids want us to, but
But like,
that's
thank
just-
goodness for that.
Yes. Yes. And so it's just that different perspective of being a little bit older and going, I get it. Yeah, I'd worked for years at Camp Easterstone, and we counselors always felt like we knew what's best, you know. And you see that parents have struggles and their care homes have struggles,
we're
and they're trying to
human.
just do their best with what they've got. And you're like, okay. So yeah, I still honor and respect that vivacity and that wanting to right the world and seeking justice of young people. I love that. My daughter and her friends are like about the environment and about, those are such important things that obviously affect us all. But they're also that, like I said, grace and that ability to not judge when we first see someone going through something and say, there's more to their story. We all have a lot more to us.
So how did you intersperse the poetry with the stories, with the journals? Because I feel like that takes, like, are we sticky notes? Are we
sticky notes? I think the answer is yes, we are sticky
But is
notes.
it like sticky notes on a wall, like moving things, like are we like Tom Cruise in Minority Report, where we're like swiping things around and you go here? Like, how are we figuring? Did you have the poems written? Did you decide you wanted a poem? And like, how did you I'm not someone who usually reads poetry, but I loved how this floated through the story in a way that it made it, because I'm not one to pick up a book of poetry. I'm sorry, I don't. It's not typically my jam. But I really enjoyed it in this case. And I also found myself, like, thankfully I have people in my life who speak with Jamaican accents too. So like reading the words out loud, I'm literally talking to myself sitting in the armchair trying to figure out, because I'm like, do I understand what's being said here? And then saying it out loud, I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Because reading it on paper and saying it out loud,
It's
totally different thing. But
Yeah.
I want to talk to you first about the poetry and then about the language component. So how did you figure out the poetry in with the journals and the writing?
I'm so excited that you brought that up because April is Poetry Month. It's so cool.
I'm sorry.
No. Actually, I quite love that because I want it to be accessible to people. I want poetry to be accessible. And I've always loved poetry, but I know that people are like, oh, it's so hard to try to, or we're trying to interpret it and you just kind of kill it when you're trying to piece it and take it apart.
Sometimes I'm just not that deep.
Right.
But I'm just not that deep.
When I'm teaching and when I was a student teacher and I was teaching some high school students about poetry, I'm like, music is poetry.
Yes.
There's lyrics. And so I love it. And I think that that's one of my big voices is poetry. But finding ways to make it fit. Yes, there were sticky notes. Yes, there were themes. So getting to the themes, education or my hair or leaving and longing, those kind of things. I thought, okay, if I place them together and they can hold their own and then, or illuminate another part of the story and help it move it along.
So you could be like, it needs a poem here, and then you would make it happen?
Not necessarily.
Can you do that? Just pull up a poem out of...
Sometimes I do that. Sometimes over the years, if an event required a parody poem or something, it was coming out. And I did actually create a poem for the book specifically because Mary Harrelson Bishop, who I like to name drop, but she is a mentor and she's with Driver Works Inc. She helped me just give me some anchoring points. So she suggested that I find some symbols to carry the book tight together and help the reader situate where they are. And so she said, well, maybe flags or something like that would help the reader. And I said, no, I have an idea. So then I wrote the poem about symbols. And I'm going to use it in my writer's workshop when I get to memoir writing, because I think sometimes we can think of ourselves in concrete ways. And so the 3 symbols that I came up with were the hummingbird, the doctor bird, which is Jamaica's national bird, and then the teacup, and mom drinks tea, and that's never left her. For England, and then the prairie lily for Saskatchewan. And so sometimes you open the book and there are all 3 because it's tying in all those places. And sometimes there's just the teacup.
I read the poem, but I didn't notice that there is.
So that's why they're there.
Symbolism. So that's about England.
Yes. So those symbols near the beginning, there's
there's one with all 3.
Yeah, exactly. And so at the beginning, there's the poem called Symbols.
Again, sometimes I'm not that deep. There's one with all 3. I'll show you.
Ooh. Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Okay. Sometimes I'm not that deep.
And what was gorgeous was that Janet said, Jen, I've included your drawings on the painting and I want you to sign it. I'm like, what? Sign your painting? She's like, but these are yours. I'm like, okay. So I signed the teacup and it was just like, is collaboration that I will always cherish. It's a painting that is in our home, and it's just so near and dear to me that she would do that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the language.
Okay.
Which is where I feel like your mom has a strong personality, because some of the things that she says in this book made me like full on laugh. How did you decide when and where you were going to pepper in the Jamaican?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because sometimes I was like, this needs something more. And there's proverbial expressions that are just so unique and fun. And then there were times when I'm like, I can't quite get this. I need to ask my mom, or I need to ask an auntie. And another writer who was so gracious, she's a really well-known writer, gave me that, make sure the voice is right. Make sure that what they're saying sounds right to someone who's from there, so you get it right. So there are sites where you can look up Jamaican dialect and you can look up, okay, this expression means this. And then there were times like I had to imagine my grandpa speaking, or, the situation where and so I talked to another auntie who gave me some ways to say it. Oh, good. And then there's ones where, before it starts, I wanted a little proverb to help us pull into the story. So there was just things that seemed fitting. I would come across sometimes a proverb or an expression and I'm like, could I use that? Would that work? And yes, and other times, no, that's not needed, or that doesn't
Not where
really
I'm
fit.
going.
Yeah, yeah.
So how long did it take you to put this together second go round?
So 2019 was when the ball really started rolling. I had asked my mom permission. There was a creative writing, memoir writing class. Bernadette Wagner was hosting it with the Writers Guild. And I was like, this is the time. I'm already writing this, and now this workshop, I think I'm supposed to be doing this.
This is the universe.
Yes, telling me. And then that same summer, the John V. Hicks Long Manuscript Creative Nonfiction Award, they alternate. So sometimes it's fiction and sometimes it's not fiction. Well, that summer it was this specific genre. I was like, okay, I think I'm supposed to enter this. So I entered it. So that was for 2020. And Mary Bishop had been at our school in 2019 and had done these workshops with each class. Each class got to create a book with her, and it was a sponsored thing. And so she had graciously looked at my manuscript. She connected me with Dina Driver. She's like, I think you need to get to know my publisher. I think hybrid is the way to go. And so I presented Dina with my manuscript and let her know that this had won a third place award. And I was like, I'm going to look at this, okay? And working with Dina was wonderful. She is an expert in journalism. That was her prior career. And so she and I were able to edit together, which was a real gift. I know that you don't get to do that often with traditional publishers in the same way. Dina was the one who asked me, who do you think would be who could do the cover? That was also a wonderful gift. So all these things just kept aligning. So 2019, we got it to the printers in January of 2022, and it was published out there in February of 2022. So, but 2019 to 2022, and I know that for some people that seems like a really long time, but it was like, it was happening, so. Yeah.
So you wrote this through the pandemic.
I would say there was a good chunk that came through that time. So I'm a full-time teacher, and online teaching meant that I was teaching online for 3 years. So this fall I came back to in-person. So online teaching meant that at 3:30, when you close, or you're saying bye, okay, bye, bye, and you're still like, off you go. But when you press that button and the meeting's closed, you know that the kids are safe at home. So I didn't have that pressure of the before and after. And also our kids weren't doing activities during the pandemic. We didn't have activities to do. So there was time. And then in the summer, of course, the summertime break that I would be working on it.
It was perfect timing for you.
It really was. Like when you say the universe, I was like, yeah, this is a God thing. This was it was bigger than me, it felt, because there were so many things that just lined up for the right time.
So you get your author copies. What
Yes.
was that like for you?
Oh, Dina was like, you better record this. The unboxing, it's like, it feels so real. And actually the proof copy, which I love very dearly, it's falling apart. I have pages that I've had to actually literally tape in, but getting the proof copy, that was cool, because you're like, this is real. It is happening. This is a book. And then, the proof, you have this little sticker that says, okay, is it ready to go? And so on the bottom, I have this little sticky note, which was, these are the corrections that we found. Oops. And recently a reader found something else about a distance from Matakakuk to Saskatoon that was incorrect. And it's like, sometimes you have to let the baby go.
Yeah.
Or like the painting, and you look back and say, that was what it was, and I'm not going to touch it anymore. It's done. And so, yeah, it was getting the books, or like, and then taking the books to stores. I got to take the ones in Saskatoon to the stores, and then they're like, you're the author? Yes, I am.
They have you sign the copies for them, so it can say signed by author.
It's just such a treat. It really is. And it's a different stage, because writing can be really private. And then that proofing and editing, it's still a fairly private endeavor. You know, you share it and you're just putting it a little bit out there, but you're still really close to it. Then bookstores and events, it's like, whoa, okay, it is out there. So exciting.
McNally Robinson's really good in Saskatoon for having author events and stuff like that. So you've probably had a good opportunity to interact with a lot of your readers.
Yes.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from them?
Oh, it's been amazing. I've heard people who've had very similar experiences, who've come from Jamaica or other cultures and countries and have shared with me. I've heard from people who've said, you know, they've traveled there, or for people who've talked about their mothers and their relationship. I've had parents who are reading it with their daughters. kids that I thought were, oh, okay, that feels young to be reading it, but are comfortable doing that. It's been really amazing. And that hasn't stopped. Today I was receiving those same kinds of stories and connections, and it's like, okay, this is the right thing. It's needed to happen, and I'm so pleased. I'm so grateful to the Library Association for One Book, One Province. It's been amazing.
This is not your first book, though.
No, it is not.
This one, very different tone from your first book.
Yes.
How would you, I guess for people who don't know, do you want to describe and talk a little bit about your first book
sure
and
can.
just how the processes are so different? And I would say the energy that comes out of them is also very different too.
Absolutely.
So what was this like compared to your first book?
So my first book I did out of necessity. So it is called When He Opened His Eyes, Gordon's Story. And it's a children's book, but it's not an easy children's book, and it is nonfiction. My firstborn was born still at full term. He was 10 pounds and 3 ounces. He was a big baby. And it was hard. It was hard to go through as a family. And my mom, it was hard for her because she was a labor and delivery nurse, and she had to be mom and grandma at that time. And it was grandma who didn't get to hold her baby. It was a tough time. And I was also a teacher. And so I was going on leave.
No.
And these little kiddos were like, hey, she's going to have this baby. And then I had come back teaching half-time and medical leave, and they're like, where's your baby? And I knew that I would need to be providing something because I knew that John and I, we wanted to have more kids. We wanted to have a bigger family. And someday they would have questions, and they would never get to know this little one. And other kids would have questions, and other families who'd gone through this. So it is there for other families.
But for you to take that on for other people, you don't have to do that. That's pretty special of you to do that, because you don't have to do that work for other people.
Yeah, that's true. And at the time, though, that was part of my healing. I didn't know really how to deal with it other than to just tell people and to let people love on me. So I was writing all through it. I wrote on a blog, and people were, so grateful, but it was just, that helped me process emotionally. It kind of always has. I write things if I'm upset. I write things if I'm happy. If someone's done something and I'm like, I need to think about this and put it in words on paper instead of just spouting it out. So that was part of my process. And I have a friend who's an artist who did a beautiful job doing the illustrations. He was just, I'm honored to do this. Just let me do it for you. Aww. And then we had kids in our lives who were like, let's draw pictures of heaven. And it was just a really beautiful project that helped me. And over the years, I've met other people who've gone through that and who have the book, and they were like, thank you. And just to know that you're not alone is a big help in everything. In life in general, is to know that you're not alone. So I think that's why I did that. But it was self-published because I needed to get it out. Mm-hmm. I needed it to be done, and just to do it. So I did it, and it's on blurb.com. So it wasn't, I say that it's a more personal story. It's not that it's more personal, it's that it's an audience that is very specific. Mm-hmm. I don't feel that you don't always need to tell everyone everything. And there's times
That's such good advice, just in general, right? In today's society, you don't need to tell everyone everything.
Right, and there were times when we were going through it, and some people would say, when I was expecting my daughter, is this your first? And for some people, yeah, it's my first. And for other people, no, and I just knew, know your audience. Yeah, know your audience, know who you're safe with, know when it's time to tell something, know when it's time to be quiet. Yeah.
So I don't know if you've realized this, but that seems very much like what you've done with this though too, and the not wanting people to feel alone, to bring people together in community. Mm-hmm. I mean, you are a kindergarten teacher, so you may come by this honestly. But it's so interesting to me that you don't want people to feel alone. You want to bring people together. You want them to feel connected. And I think that's what you've done with this book too. And did you mean to do that?
Well, so yes and no. I don't think at first, I don't know that was my goal. And my publisher is very good at saying, have a mission statement, know where you're going with this. Why are you doing this? But I knew as I got further into it, like my original, when I was 22, it was a Mother's Day gift. And I wanted mom to be proud of me or to say she sees that I see her. But at this point, when I was writing it, I was like, this is something, like you said, that is for more people. And I didn't know that it was not necessarily for the people not to feel alone, but to be connected, to feel belonging, to see themselves represented. That was something really important.
So what are you doing now?
Well, I'm doing the tour.
Okay. But Do you have another book in you? Do you have something in mind? Do you have doodles and notes that you're turning into something?
So there are projects in mind. People, when they hear me read, they say, we need an audiobook. And I say, I know, I will get there. So I do want to make an audiobook of Miss G and me because language needs to be heard. And I
Would your
think
mom
that
add to it, do you think?
maybe. I have even some recordings of my grandmother's voice.
Your husband's
John's like,
shaking his head. He's like,
"No."
absolutely not. That's not happening. But I think it would be something really special to have.
I might let her do like a little intro or something. That might be fun so that they can hear her voice for sure. She's loving the audience.
I like that he's just like, that's not happening. I know your mother, and there's no way. There's no way that's
They've got a
happening.
great relationship. It's always like a little bit of
Little
fun.
elbows here and there, yeah.
Exactly.
But what are you like? What next community project are you working
Well,
on?
I do have a dear friend who has come through a lot. She's was a refugee and has lived more than her lives that she's already been through. So, and whenever we visit, it's 4 hours and or more, and it goes by like that. But I know that I have to do it justice, and this took me a long time. And I know that it's a country that I'm not as familiar with, and a language that I'm not as familiar
she
with. From South Sudan.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot there. There's a history there. There's conflict, complexities. There's war. There's so much, and I think it would be such an honor, but such a big job. It's very daunting. So I want to do that justice, but I want to give it time, and I want to give her time. And so
Does she know you want to do this, or
she told me?
Okay.
She asked me. I did not go out seeking her. She sought me out, and she said, "Jen, I want you to do this." So, okay, that's huge. Woo, thank you. But wow. So it will be in time. And I don't like to talk about something before it's happening because I'm like, now
That's an author thing.
Yeah. But I feel like that would be a huge honor, but it also, I have to do it really carefully because when you're trying to give voice to someone and you have to make sure where their power lies and that it's not about you and you have to step aside. And this one had me in it, my voice. And she's like, well, I want to include you because you're part of my, I'm like, okay, but we have to make sure that the focus is where it needs to be. So that's a big project. So John's trying to encourage me with do something smaller, do some fiction, do some. I still write articles, and I'm still in it. But yeah, I'm a full-time teacher as well. So just taking this in at the moment.
Full-time kindergarten teacher. Like, let's not like give that a little more credit that it
Right.
give it a little more credit. Okay. I want to open this up to questions because you guys may have figured out that I could talk all day, but I come by that honestly. So I'm going to open the chat up here. You can type your questions if you want in the chat. Or if there's a question in the room, I can ask it, I can repeat it so people online can hear. So if you have any questions or comments about the book that you'd like to make, this is your opportunity to pump her tires. Anybody? I will stare you down.
And as a teacher, I've got good weight.
I'm waiting to see if anybody is. Are we typing? Are we not typing? Are we really not having any questions? This is very, I usually have some, I have asked a lot of questions. I guess I can ask you one about how publishing worked for you.
Yes.
Because often with the book club, I end up working with people who are working with the bigger, more traditional publishers, which is a whole other ordeal in itself, other cooks in the kitchen.
Yes.
When it comes to publishing with Driver Inc., how did that work for you?
So Dina Driver Works Inc. is a hybrid publisher. So it is not what would you call it, vanity projects at all. She is serious about her work and takes serious work into her publication house. So I submitted my manuscript and I paid Dina to do editing and also paid for the printing. But Dina has amazing connections. She's a retired journalist. So she knows how it works. She knows how the book industry works. And so with her working with me on editing and that, we were able to get the book done. And then she has people that she's connected to for printing for all the different areas. And Creative Saskatchewan, we got a grant. So that was amazing.
Nice.
That was huge to take care of a lot of those costs wonderful. But we applied 3 times, so it's a serious thing. You have a jury, and they, based on what you've done, and they may accept it one time, but you don't know when that's, or what it was that was just right to get it. So that was wonderful to be able to do those things. And then with Dina, I can sell privately myself. And then she also is she's a vendor with many, many bookstores in Saskatchewan. So we've got Sask Handmade, we've got Indigo and McNally Robinson, Penny University, we've got the university bookstores. I got into the Western Development Museum. So it's all over the province. So that's great. And I've had interviews with CBC and with CTV and with Global. So those media connections as well. So I've been really pleased. I know that Dina has a list of authors and books that she's got a pamphlet with her. And I think that her authors are really pleased with the work that she can do. She takes us to craft markets, gets us out there. And it feels down home. It feels like you can trust your work to your author, because to your publisher. I know sometimes traditional publishers, the bigger houses, the ones in Canada they're pretty good at working with their authors. But I know that some of the bigger ones, they might change your title, or they might say, we're going to find the artist for you, the cover for you.
You have no say in the cover.
And you don't have a say. And we don't like how you worded this, and we're going to change this. And you just go, okay, and you get paid, and that's done, and you'll get the royalties. And here I'm continually getting author payments and getting out there and into libraries as well. So it's worked so well for me, this route. It might not be for everyone.
What did you do with your first author paycheck?
I probably put it in the bank. I don't even know.
Did you frame it? Did you have a moment with it?
Oh, definitely. I definitely took pictures. I got that for my creative copyright license thing, and the lending checks. Those are like, whoa, I didn't know that authors got paid from loans, like book loans. I did not know that. I don't know why I didn't know that, but I'm like, libraries rock.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yes,
there's a
go ahead.
question.
Not necessarily a question, but a comment. So I just love the book. I think it's excellent. And just surprised hearing you say tonight that the Jamaican voice isn't always just your own. It comes across as so authentic. And so it's amazing. So great to come across this. But also, I reviewed it on Goodreads, and I saw your review, and I think you only rated yourself 4 stars.
Oh no, that wasn't my own review. No.
Okay, because I saw that and I thought, why did the author do that?
Do you read Goodreads reviews?
I do.
And how do you feel about Goodreads? Because I know that some authors refuse to go into the depths
Oh,
of
okay.
Goodreads because sometimes the internet's a mean place.
You know what? I've been blessed, I guess, with lovely people and friends and family and readers who I don't know. Actually, that's the most exciting. I love hearing from family and friends, but when there's a reader that I don't even know, I'm like, oh, this is a big deal. And I'll show my husband, I'll be like, look, I don't know this person, and they've reviewed it. So yeah, I've always been a people pleaser, so I like to hear good things back.
Yes.
So I'm not like, no, I can't see that. And I've learned to be okay with seeing and hearing my own voice, and so reading reviews is just, like you said, pumping the tires. It confirmed and affirmed me in ways that, oh yeah, I did do this. This was a good thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sakib says, there was a gentleness when describing the hardships faced that was very nice and refreshing, not to downplay the challenges, but to impart a humanity to life and to this world.
Oh, that is so good to hear. Yeah.
And Colleen says, I don't have a question, but I did want to comment on how much I love this book. I think it's a perfect one book, one province book. I think I mentioned to you already, Jennifer, but I would describe it as a warm, comfy patchwork quilt.
I love that. I love that from Colleen. Yeah, when I got to meet her at Government House, it was just like, oh, I love that description, because you can wrap yourself up in a quilt and there's stories, right, throughout it that connect. And I wanted that to be this, that you could pick it up and put it down and pick it up again.
Yes.
And jump around. I jump around when I do my readings, and that's okay. So I'm just really grateful to hear both those comments.
It is very cozy. Okay. Do we have another question or comment?
Oh,
Okay.
I haven't finished the book, and we talked about that before you started speaking tonight. So no spoiler alerts, right? I'm glad your mom and dad are still alive.
Yes.
My worry. But I love the poetry. I love the structuring. I think the poetry for me really added a humanness to it. You know, like it brought things alive, just the different words, and it's you know, with that poetry, you know, it's not paragraphs. It's these, you've got to say it in little short chunks, you know, and it just seems to catch that.
Oh, thank you.
Really well. So thank you for that.
Oh,
I've
thank
never
you.
come across a, you know, I mean, this is lovely. Love the symbols too. You know, they really bring things to life about your mom. And I'm just curious, why did you want to? You said this is to be a Mother's Day gift, but why did you want to write a book about your mom? You know,
There were so many different times that kind of sparked that. Being a writer ever since I was a child, there's a lot of us who are like, yeah, I've just always been a writer. And that wasn't something that I claimed until later, but I look back and I was like, yeah, I was always writing. And I looked to my mom for a lot of things. She taught me how to write. She taught me how to read before I went to school. So I was probably one of those kids that the teacher's like, oh, great, what are we going to have for her to do now? But I would try to copy her signature. I would try to copy how she did things. I just looked up to her a lot. And then as I got older and I went, oh, she's been through some things. That's interesting. And realizing that when people pointed out, maybe you're a little different, or maybe you're experiencing the world in a way that I didn't experience it, I thought, well, I think she's the reason why. So I wanted to delve into that. And then just, yeah, as I grew, there was just so many things that I could see and learn from her that kind of went, yeah, this needs to happen. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing her with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's interesting when we go from kids to realizing our parents are human.
Yes.
And that our mom isn't mom,
Yes.
she's Ruth.
Yes.
Or, you know, and that she's seen some things and
Yes.
she's made some tough decisions. And
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, I still call my mom for the most mundane of things, probably every couple of days, as mom. But also it's, you know, she's had dinner with her friends, or they have their own lives and their own, and it's funny when you accept your parent as another adult.
Yes, and that comes through quite frequently. And I think I got glimpses of that growing up because she had a nursing uniform. So when she put that on, it was like, you are another person. They had the cap at the time, and the stockings, the white, you know, support stockings, and the white shoes. And I was like, whoa, that's serious. And sometimes we would pick her up at the hospital. And there was a couple of times where I was in the hospital and she would come out off her shift, and I was like, oh. And people would interact with her in different ways. And I was like, okay. So getting those glimpses were like, all right, I'm seeing something different. My dad was a teacher and school was something you did. So it wasn't as mysterious, but this nursing part of her was like, I want to know more about this. Yeah. So, but yeah, you learn a lot when you're seeing your parents as a person and not just mom or dad.
Okay, before we wrap up, would you read something for us?
I would love to. Oh, are there any suggestions?
No, I
Any
want to know.
requests?
No, I want you to open to where you would read from.
Oh, there's so many. Oh, so many. Okay, let me just think here. I kind of want to go towards the poetry because that's fun. So I'll read two things.
Okay.
That's okay? Okay. I'll read about her when she was a little girl, Kingston, Jamaica, 1954, and then I'll read about what she left to come to Saskatchewan. Kingston, Jamaica, 1954. Before the jet stream, Mum, what did you do for fun? I, Miss G, don't like to sit indoors, sit around not doing things. I was a skipping, hopscotching girl, gardening and sewing, purposeful movement, no sloth, no slack, taught staying with the two aunties in Kingston would be adventure, holiday, capital of Jamaica, big city, big happenings. It was hot, suffocating, lack of breeze, lackluster. Left at their neat and tidy house alone, while two aunties went to work. I did not last the week. Came home early to sweet crepe myrtle, gardenia, and hibiscus rural air. Home where I could breathe, move, catch a breeze, and be me. So that's Mom as a little girl.
Oh my God, I love it.
And then I'll read this other one. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, 1998. She left hot humidity for dry cold, dry hot. Sycamore, banana, bamboo for pine and poplar, mostly prairie. Outside she gardens, her oasis. Inside the store-bought tropics, guava, papaya, lychee, mangoes, rice and black-eyed peas, ginger beer, hot rum toddies for sickness give her children a taste of Baillieston, Clarendon, Jamaica. Do they know what it means? Do they feel color? Or do they feel it only when someone asks, where do you come from? Do they know? It gets straightened out of their hair. It's called a relaxer. Relax hair, calm down, fit in. But the landscape remains on their noses and on their lips. Water hits their hair and tightly curled roots suck moisture. When summer comes, their skin calls to the sun. Restore Jamaica's color to these Canadian kids.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to ask you, you slipped into your mom's accent so flawlessly. Was there a little mockery of her when you were younger?
You know what? I
Or
don't
did
think
you
we
not
dared.
dare?
I don't think we did.
Because you did that so well.
I don't think we dared. And you know what? I don't even know that I realized it. It was an accent. Some kids would say that, and we were like, what are you talking about? My mom has an accent. My mom is mom.
Just the emphasis
just the
on
way she
different
talks,
words. Like,
right?
it's not even a case that the words are different, but
Yeah.
even just the way you said hibiscus differently,
yeah.
right?
Yes. And so when I think about it, I take real great care because I don't want it to be for comedy.
No,
And I
no.
don't want it to be for show, but I feel like to feel like you're there and to experience the culture, the language is lyrical, musical. And so I wanted to catch that. And I wanted to be true to that. Because when you're being a character or a person who really exists, you want to honor the whole, which includes the way they speak. So that was important to me and important to include it. I like to think I have an ear for language, and I do teach in French immersion, but I like to listen, and sometimes I slip into things. My husband says he slips into things when he goes into places. So I like to try to hear and take in. So I think that that's why I'm able to do it, because I did not grow up in Jamaica. I did not grow up hearing it all the time. And yes, mom has it, but it only really gets stronger when she's on the phone with someone from back home, or if she's tired, and then it's like, okay, that's more there. But I didn't grow up thinking that she had one until people pointed it out, and I was like, what are you talking about?
No, I love it. But you just slipped into it, and I was like, I wonder if she, and then,
Yeah,
I
no.
probably didn't dare.
Nope.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all online for being with us tonight. And we'll post this also to YouTube. So if you missed it, you can rewatch it or you can share it along with whoever. But thank you so much for your time tonight and for the book and for Miss G for sharing her
you.
with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.